Sounds like I'm humble bragging, and I am. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. It is Friday night, and it's time to do another movie night because I don't think we've been to the movie theaters in like 3 weeks now. It's probably because it sucks. And you really don't want to be there this weekend because there's nothing but Taylor Swift, man. So we're gonna take a nice little break and watch a good old classic. I can't even call it a '90s movie; it's a 2000s movie. But we're watching Bring It On here tonight. And joining me on this show, I have a lovely group, a very, very lovely group of cohorts joining me here tonight. We're going to save Eddie Brock here for last. I'm not sure if he's even back yet, but Cider, you're here and you're joining us. How you doing?
I'm in the void, and this is a classic.
I mean, for 2000s, I mean, you got to put it in context.
I think there's an upcoming Criterion release for it coming up soon.
Oh, yeah. I see. So if we're considering this is a classic, then Thunderbirds has to be a classic as well. So
I mean, Dude, Where's My Car is considered a quote classic for some people. I mean, you got to be very, very loose with that definition there. So
no way.
Yeah, that movie.
Dude, Where's My Car?
And making his debut here on the Society Reviews channel is our good buddy Eddie Brock. How you doing there, Eddie?
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Konnichiwa.
Absolument. Hey. I don't know what to do. Hi, everyone.
Also joining us down here, somewhere near Whataburger, I'm sure, is our good buddy Rick Aragon. How you doing there?
I'm doing great, and yes, there is a Whataburger walking distance to my house.
There's
a walking Whataburger.
Mm-hmm.
And then also joining us this week, someone who is hopefully not fighting the urge to sleep like he was last weekend on our shows, our good buddy Rob Motto. How you doing there, Rob?
I'm doing fine. No, I took a nap earlier today from after my third bowl. So yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. Yeah. I got some sleep already. So.
Best kind of nap.
I mean, normally I would yell at you for almost falling asleep on the show, but now you're working now. You're being a little bit more responsible. So it's like, you know what? I'll let him have this one. He's earned it.
He's calling it the big bucks, not like the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. He's still gonna yell at. Jacob's still gonna yell at us for smoking weed anyway. So Motto, you got it easy.
Mm-hmm.
That would be that guy.
This one?
You don't see anything.
No,
I'm not smoking weed.
Yeah, the one past the one over there. That one. But hey, we're joining you guys here tonight because we got a lot of things to talk about, and obviously we're going to talk about this film here because I got a lot of commentary, especially social commentary about this film here. But I wanted to start off this show by talking about a topic that has come up multiple times over the last couple of years. People are still in denial about this actually happening, but if there's smoke, there's fire, and I think people need to start accepting the fact that there's a very real possibility that NBC Universal could buy Warner Brothers within the next couple of years. Now, we've talked about this over the last couple of years, and I think a lot of people have kind of dismissed this idea under the guise that, well, the government will never allow Hollywood to become a monopoly or duopoly. Like they'll definitely step in. It's like, guys, if you're holding your breath that the government's gonna stop this deal from happening, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You're probably going to suffocate. I mean, they may end up causing this whole thing to be sealed off in like pieces, sort of like the Disney deal, but you got to kind of look at the reality here, and it may be a reality here in a couple of years. So this is a report that came out earlier this week. Bounding in the Comics covered it. Warner Brothers employees believe the studio will be sold within the next 2 years, and it appears to leak credence to previous reports. So Warner Brothers is a company, as you all know, that has been kind of just a money pit for quite some time. If you could recall, it was Discovery that ended up buying Warner Brothers about a couple of years ago. That deal was finalized, so they've been one company. David Zaslav, who came over from Discovery, has been running the show. He's been hacking away at a lot of the debt that Warner Brothers owes. I think he slashed about almost $10 billion in debt, but I mean, that still really doesn't make a dent of the overall money that this company owes at this point. There's been a lot of talks about, putting James Gunn in charge of the DCEU. Was that a smart decision? Is he even qualified to run a studio? But if you're looking at it from the perspective of they're doing all this because they're trying to flip this property away for another sale, then it might start making a little bit more sense here. But the report comes from Variety, who states that some in the lot are convinced that another company, most likely Universal, will buy Warner Brothers within 2 years, making recent DC subplots and upheavals feel quaint. She goes on to cite the Wall Street analyst and venture capitalist Rich Greenfield, who informed her that the bottom line is that DC, so they need to get DC to work, whether Zaslav owns it or whether Brian Roberts owns it or somebody else owns it. So, interesting enough, this report is basically laying credence to a rumor that, like I said, has been around for almost a couple of years now, really since they think the deal was finalized initially. But they're saying that, hey, look, a bigger company like NBC Universal could be in the market for buying Warner Brothers, and there's a bigger issue going on here that not a lot of people are talking about, because if this actually does happen, like if we're talking about NBC buying Warner Brothers in a couple of years, NBC already has the largest market share of any studio in Hollywood right now, even bigger than Disney, if you can believe that. I mean, they pretty much own a lot of the cable networks. They own the Peacock network. So much of this, so much of their portfolio in NBC Universal is absolutely insane. And then not only would they be buying Warner Brothers, as I said earlier, they would be buying Discovery as well. So they would essentially be taking a 2-for-1 deal with two major companies, television studios and movie studios for that matter, being swallowed up into one. And Rob, we've talked about this so many times over the last few years that Hollywood used to be 31 least small to major studios like about 30-40 years ago, and if this deal goes through, you're probably looking at about 3, if we're being honest with ourselves. Because I mean, you'll have NBC, Disney, who knows what's happening with Disney now with the financial trouble that they're having, and then Paramount, and then that's it. I mean, maybe Sony, if you want to throw Sony a bone here too, but I mean, we're looking at a reality here where you're going to have a duopoly in Hollywood sooner rather than later. So I wanted to start this one off with you, kind of get your take on this whole situation. What do you think about the rumors of Warner Brothers buying, NBC buying Warner Brothers and the ramifications that deal could have for Hollywood?
Yeah, unfortunately, this goes back to the 1970s when the studio system basically ended. I mean, it was coming to an end in the 1960s because they were being broken up and bought off by different corporations. So they, you still had the business presence of Paramount and MGM and whatever, but it wasn't the same. Like when Hollywood began, it was and Rick can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was the 5 studios. And that kind of expanded a little bit over time. And the era that we know, we remember all of these different production companies, but even then they were all owned by these same entities. So when I grew up in the 90s, it was 7 companies owning 93% of the media in this country. I mean, it was still really bad. Now it's even worse. Now it's gotten considerably worse. So and you just see like the lack of risk you see tentpole after tentpole, franchise movie after franchise movie, and it's diminishing returns. They might have the occasional big box office hit with like Marvel, like for instance, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 did pretty well this year. But outside of that, it's been incredibly kind of like dribs and drabs of box office returns. So look, I love Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers has a great history, but it's been a terribly managed company for the last 25 to 30 years. It's not just the last decade or so. So if this is what happens, I certainly am not in favor of it. I don't want to see it happen. But Peacock sucks. As a streaming service, Peacock is terrible. I don't know. They can't give that service away for free. And now that they've started charging people for it, I don't know that anyone's willing to really pay for it. So maybe it's a business strategy to sort of be like, hey, we're going to improve our portfolio. But that's a really big purchase just to sort of up your profile in the streaming game. So it's something, again, I don't want it to see it happen, but I don't know how Zaslav is going to get rid of the debt otherwise.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, you can go back to when Time Warner bought Ted Turner's properties, like right at 2001 when that happened, and then there's like the whole thing with like AT&T, and they've been passing this buck around, like I said, for decades now, and it doesn't seem like anyone truly knows what they're doing because they're still selling this thing off, and it's just a hot potato from one company to another. And the only thing that's changed now is that now they embroidered Discovery into this as well. So now you're talking about a majority of the cable networks like HGTV, Food Network, TLC, and a whole bunch of other things like that are now going to be brought in. So they're not only going to get one company for a cheap price, you're going to get two companies in, and then like I said, what else do you got left now? I mean, we're going to get to a point now where streaming is going to have to take a more serious, I guess, place in the market in order for us to really compete. Because I don't know how much like Netflix and like Apple and what's the Amazon can really compete at this point on the streaming thing. But it just feels like as far as this cable thing's going, like we're on our last days with this one. Rick, what's kind of your thoughts here?
Well, I'm curious. When the studios back in the day lost their theaters, we forget that they had a whole. That's how they managed to also control the market because they had their own theater chains. Warner's had their own theaters, and Paramount had their own theaters. So I think maybe the Disney studio was the only one that did not have, ironically enough, their own theater chain. When they lost it in a lawsuit, I think it was antitrust. I think that's when the studios had to find new ways to try to get their product out. I don't know if this is going to be good for the creative side because it's just going to encourage people to do more tent poles. I think Rob mentioned about how they don't want to take risk. You're not going to take risk, and you're going to try to find the new property. Remember, after what was it, the Hunger Games became a big hit. They started looking for the next one. They tried that with was it the Maze Runner, which I liked. They tried that with Divergent, which belly flopped disastrously.
Hard.
Yeah, they did that also. Once they got Harry Potter, they tried other children type wizarding books. I mean, it takes a lot to turn Bridge to Terabithia into like a franchise. So it's not going to be very very interesting, very creative. So we're gonna probably get stuck maybe watching more of these kind of boring films, and it's kind of a shame because you had back in the day a whole group, all these studios had different types. MGM could be counted on for the musicals and the lavish production. Warner's was always the kind of the gangster, more urban working class type. Columbia was also kind of more the working class, middle of the road, Frank Capra type films. So we were going to lose a lot of that with all these big production companies, but they want money. And honestly, I wouldn't want to see anything on the Discovery Network. Like what, TLC? Nothing. There's nothing there. But for full disclosure, I still have Peacock, but the only things I ever watch on Peacock are documentaries.
Yeah, Cider, let me ask you this. I'm not sure how much big if like a TV fan you are right now. But like I said, this has big implications with television, with movies, and look, we're already in a bad spot creatively because, as you know, through the Black Pill stream, we talk a lot about this. But I mean, NBC, a lot of people don't really talk about this. NBC politically and kind of ideology is really no different than Disney. I think the only difference is that they're smart enough to allow Disney to essentially puke all over themselves and embarrass themselves, and then they can just wave their hands from behind and be like, hey, we still got properties over here. But I mean, they're pretty much like the same thing. So it's not like the industry is going to get any better with Comcast and charge of what, 70% of the market share moving forward. So, John, your general thoughts on them taking over here?
See, I'm not convinced. I don't think that NBC will beat him to the punch. I think the Saudis want a piece of the U.S. media market. They made a move on Star Wars, and Bob Iger told them no, stupidly. And but that demonstrated that the Saudi prince wants a piece of Americana. Now, if Warner Brothers goes up for sale, there's a lot of stuff that is very popular internationally that I'm sure that guy would love to get his hands on. Now, you go and put him in charge of this sort of stuff, the final decision making. Yeah, you're going to lose a bit of the Judeo-Christian veneer on some of the presentations, but a lot of it will return to probably mostly the 80s stuff because he's a big fan of that like action experimental genre where just like throw anything at the wall and see if it works, because that's where Star Wars came from, and I guess that's his favorite franchise in the universe. So that's what I think. I don't think NBC will make the move. I think that the Saudis will come in just like they did with the PGA. They'll just say, name your price. We'll add a couple more zeros.
Yeah, that's interesting because remember the Saudis a few years ago, they actually were trying to like get their way into Hollywood, and they had brought like people like The Rock and Ari Emanuel and all these big celebrities recording the Saudi prince. Now, of course, those things kind of fell apart because the Saudis, they killed the journalist and made a big deal about it, but they're still there. The money's still on the table. I mean, the public fund for Saudi Arabia is like, what, $600 billion just for a public fund. So I mean, they got the money to throw around, and they're desperately in want of something. So I mean, that could be a play.
Well, it's interesting though that it wasn't that long ago that they finally allowed movie theaters to actually exist. I'm sure they were watching things privately at home, but actual movie theaters. Yeah. So now that's the effort to open up Saudi Arabia, but. Now they want to go from barely opening movie theaters to controlling cinema, which will be curious because, as we all know, they keep telling us that the Jews control all of cinema, and now the Saudis want to take over. So it's going to be interesting.
No, just Western cinema, Rick. It's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, the Japanese are safe for now.
Right. For now. Eddie,
the remake of Lawrence of Arabia is going to be a tremendous.
It's going to be quite a flip there.
Moneymaker, as I like to say.
But that's okay. He fought the Turks.
Oh, God.
There you go. Actually, as a trying to become an independent filmmaker and all, I've been talking to a lot of friends of mine, and a lot of them being independent filmmakers. They've been really, really interested in how the streaming services and everything have been, been specializing, and now I think film in a white pill kind of way. I think film now is going to start turning into more of a genre based kind of a thing. Like you're going to subscribe now to genre things. You're going to subscribe specifically if you want action, if you want adventure, you want comedy. There's going to be that studio system from the old times. There's going to be studios that are just going to be based solely on different kinds of genres. And I think that's going to make, I think there's going to be a bit of a, Blumhouse and you go to Blumhouse and you go to A24, and those are the artsy films, right? Mm-hmm. And you can find artsy films in Warner Brothers or in Paramount or all those things, but what you really want, and those are the interesting movies. That's why they only put out 8-9 movies a year. Those are the interesting ones, and those are the ones you're actually going to want to pay money to watch now. And I think there's going to be a big bubble there that when the studios eventually implode themselves, that there's going to be this massive hole that is going to be covered up with all these little bases of different genre types of films and different genre kinds of filmmakers. So it might go back kind of maybe to the 70s and things like that. I'm hoping, maybe we'll go back to the 70s.
That's if we somehow manage to get like an independent boom, because that's the only way that I see this playing out. It's like if we can have some kind of independent creation period where it's just completely outside the Hollywood system, then maybe. But I think the biggest hurdle in that plan is getting distribution. I mean, it's not really producing television shows and movies. That's really the easy part when you really look back to it, is getting people to actually watch it. And when you have these major studios that have so much control over streaming platforms and movie theaters, I mean, a studio like Disney can basically say, oh, you want to play that movie at your theater? Well, you can't play any of our movies at the theater. And guess which one brings up more money? So it's good power plays like that can stifle competition, which is exactly what they want. But
we saw it with The Sound of Freedom this summer.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem is the lack of talent, actually. I mean, distribution is a challenge, don't get me wrong. The lack of talent, like young people coming up who want to be directors or screenwriters or even want to work in television, are all fucking ideologues. They all want to push their own political bullshit. They all want to put themselves as the main character, that fucking main character syndrome.
They want to see
disease
themselves.
But that's what I was saying. Like inside the Hollywood system, that's basically like what it is now. If there's going to be any kind of renaissance, it has to be completely outside of Hollywood. We don't have to deal with all these like garbage mandates and everything.
So much of the new Hollywood in the 1970s, those were people that came outside of Hollywood, who came from different universities or other places. They came to Hollywood because they had a vision to make the movies the way they wanted to, and they had great respect for these Hollywood directors, but they wanted to do it their own way. We don't have that. There is no passion coming up from the younger generation.
They learned. I was going to say, all these older directors learned, or the 1970s directors, they learned from the past. They learned from the films of the past. Nowadays, a lot of the up-and-coming directors and writers don't want to learn. Like Rob said, all they want to do is, not entertain, but indoctrinate, and to kind of convince you of the rightness of their cause, whatever it is. And again, I go back to the old studio system where they would take a contract player and then develop him or her over time to see the audience reaction. They didn't just toss them in there and think, oh, it's gonna be a massive success. Same with the writers and same with the directors. That's why we still have live action short film as a category, because that was a training ground for directors to learn their craft. In early television, they had production companies like Desilu that also developed their core talent. Now you don't. Now you think that maybe with your iPhone you can make this generation's Lost Arabia. It's not going to work that way. It takes a long time. You need to learn that craft, and they're not willing to do that. Sorry, Eddie.
No, it's just I think yeah, maybe right now it might be like I think maybe right now the world of media and everything is being controlled by the worst type of people. But the worst type of people eventually are going to get replaced by this brand new crop of kids that are going to be coming up, and it's going to be people like making things like the Sound of Violence and things like that, or The Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Violence sounds like a great movie. It sounds like a great movie.
That's an act of violence.
It's a sequel.
A history of violence.
Jean-Claude Van Damme in The Sound of Violence.
No, and there's actually an independent movie. I think it actually is called The Sound of Violence.
Yeah, that's a sequel to The Act of Killing. That movie is fucked up. You guys want to see a fucked up documentary? Watch that one sometime.
Sound of Violence, right? You treat it like The Sound of Music, though, right? So you have Jean-Claude Van Damme on a German hillside singing "The Hills Are Alive" with the sound of gunfire.
Yeah. Directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
A history of
by Spielberg, so it's kind of wacky.
A History of Violence. That was pretty good.
History
You
of violence
see,
is great.
for those guys who missed our Black Pill stream last Wednesday night, we literally like came up with like this TV show for like Daredevil that was like far better than like anything that Hollywood's doing, especially with the actual Daredevil property, which is being canceled at the moment. But it's like, but this is the problem. It's like we can literally like pull a better idea like out of our butts in like 2 minutes, like half joking, but it'd still be better than what Hollywood's actually doing right now. And that's really just the problem. It's like no one's really just throwing ideas at the wall and running with it. It's like everything's got to be like, well, does this fit insert group here, or does this offend this person over here? Do we portray these people as a Nazi enough? It's like, guys, what are we doing here?
Right, and I think that whole thing is eventually going to be starting to be parodied out, and we're going to eventually. I think we're eventually going to grow up out of that. That's actually kind of sweet.
Yeah, so last Wednesday we created this whole lore about Daredevil going to Louisiana to fight crime, and then this is Daredevil's latest new evil villain. As you can see here, what do we call him? Swamp Devil.
Swamp Devil.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
It's like literally, it's just going to be him fighting Daredevil with like a bunch of alligators in the bayou, and there's going to be like a whole thing about like voodoo and Catholicism, and it's like
and the symbiotes. There was going to be a symbiote that attached itself to an alligator, and then him. That explained his weird little spiky arm doodad. So, like Daredevil can't like one bap him on the head and be like, okay, we're done here. And then he takes Daredevil's stick.
Sounds too much like Waylon Jones, okay?
Right?
Yeah.
Does he talk like Leatherhead from the Ninja Turtles? Hey, come around here.
No, he needs to talk like them Cajun tree hunter boys. Them fellas that go down into the river and the bayou and they bring up that wood that don't got no oxygen in it no more.
We were talking about the possibility of having like a Colonel Sanders like character in this whole thing too.
No. If it's going to be Louisiana, it's going to be Louisiana, you need that Cajun cook, Justin Wilson. I guarantee it. That's all Rouge, Louisiana. There
could be like some Duck Dynasty guys in there too, because they're from Louisiana.
So they're helping Daredevil, right?
Where does Deliverance take place?
In Georgia, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it that or is it Mississippi?
We can't get somebody to show up and go, I don't want that.
Georgia Mississippi.
And it's too bad that he's here in Louisiana Bayou country. You can't pop Gambit in there. I know it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
You can, you can make a copyright-free Gambit, right? So instead of charging up cards, he charges up power tools.
Lemmy LaRouche.
Exactly. Yep. So you could do like the Asylum Films ripoff. So it's not Gambit, but it's a guy that does the same thing.
He has a whip and everything.
I remember the rumor that they wanted Channing Tatum to be Gambit. I'm going.
It wasn't a rumor.
Well, it was a rumor. They were in production.
The horror, just because he's Southern. Ugh.
Yeah. So we get great ideas like this, and we can't get any of this. Instead, what we get is the Taylor Swift movie, which is now looking to make about $130 million worldwide at the box office. And because this is a concert movie where she's pretty much in control of everything, she's probably going to end up making about 60% of the box office profits of this whole thing is all said and done. So yeah, we're shoving Taylor Swift into football now, and now all the Swifties are going to the movie theaters. There was this one clip that was going online. I might have to pull this up too, just how annoying it is, but there's a excuse me. There's a reason why we're not going to the movie theaters this week, because we're going to be surrounded by these people, and I don't want to be surrounded by these people because I enjoy my happiness. Yeah, I enjoy not wanting to kill everyone around me. So this is a scene from one theater of the Taylor Swift concert as this is happening, and yeah, this is... Yeah, so all around the country, that's happening. And Taylor Swift is going to make even more money off of this. She almost made like $1 billion off the tour altogether. And now she's going to be making even more money off of the movie of the tour. And then this is only going to be like the beginning of a new trend where all like the major like music stars like Beyonce and Drake are going to be like, oh, well, let me release my own movie tour thing.
Beyonce already is.
I just want to say real quick, there are concert films that like movie lovers like will laud, and like The Last Waltz and shit like that. I think concert movies are fucking stupid. even for like great musicians, great artists. I think they're fucking dumb. You know why? That's not a movie. It's filming a fucking performance. I don't get it. I just do not get it.
It's just backstage footage.
I don't know if you have the clip of Al Michaels talking on Thursday Night Football where she was there again. He's like, the sideshow cannot be the show. Most people tuning in are here to watch football games, so that's what we're going to focus on. And I was very happy with that. So
yeah, so I'm just curious. Will this Taylor Swift thing will it qualify for documentary feature? Because I know it's supposed.
Probably. I wouldn't be
Yeah,
surprised.
by the way, Al Michaels also called out the fact that they were blatantly point shaving in last night's game because apparently the what was it, the differential was like 10.5, and then they're like I think the Chiefs won by 11. So it's like like I said, it's getting to the point where even the normies notice now. So
Well, they were literally. Well, KC was literally chucking the ball when it got so bad for it. So I mean, wasn't a great game to begin with. That's the right game, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the wrong game.
Yeah, Denver basically couldn't put up shit until the very end. Yeah, and then KC they missed opportunities to score, and it was just like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
I don't see anything wrong with concert films because if I can't go to that concert, I will watch them and I'll enjoy them, but I'm able to be separate and understand, oh, this is a filmed performance, and that's all it is, because you're certainly getting different angles than you would if you had bought your seat. I'm not going to watch like a Stevie Nicks concert film to worship her the way these people are all but worshiping. It looks like a revival meeting. I almost expect them to start speaking in tongues or the lyrics or song lyrics. It's, to me, very bizarre. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, for me, I've not seen Stop Making Sense, and everyone seems to think it's great. I did see a Big Time, and I was puzzled by it, but hey, there's nothing wrong with it. But this whole idea that, oh, this is a great thing. Oh, you people you're nuts. You're nuts. You people are seriously deranged. I want to see Beyonce and Taylor Swift battle it out in their concert films.
You give them an idea, they're going to do it. So
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
So hold on now. Like, okay, Taylor Swift movie. It starts out like a concert thing, right? Everything's going great. Regular old shaky cam, jackass with a shoulder mounted camera, trying not to get wailed in the face by the backup dancers, that kind of thing. And but then it does the weird. Do you remember the movie John Dies at the End?
I've heard of it.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So it does that weird Lovecraftian thing where all of a sudden it just stops being our reality and weird ass shit starts happening for Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
You know? And at the end of it, she's battling Cthulhu in the ocean in a giant Jaeger from Pacific Rim, right? With her theme song music in the background, right? Like some of her top hits playing in the background, right? You know? And it'll be great. And that's I would absolutely go see that if that's how it went, man. Like that.
Here's my question.
It's not what
You'd have a reason for that next album,
right?
Here's my question. How can Hollywood have so many potheads and they're all bad at just coming up with ideas? Like how can you be both?
It's the Satanism.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because they don't believe in anything and they lack creativity.
You see, when Moses talked to the burning bush, he got a good idea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, I'm not creative, but I'm at least I can at least look at the past and analyze it and be like, hey, why did these things work? Let's try to recreate that in a modern way. You know what I mean? Even if you're doing a detective movie or a Western or something like that, or like even if it's like a fucking sex comedy from the 80s, why did people like to go see them? What made them good? You know, try to recreate some of that magic with something original. You know what I mean? But they don't want to do that.
You know what the crazy thing about the wheel is? We haven't had to reinvent it.
Yet. Until the Tesla comes along and ruins the party. So.
Right, the Cybertruck triangle wheels.
Yep. So we're getting ready to switch over to our movie night. So the same thing that happened last week, we're going to do this week. I'm posting the links to our Twitch page and our Rumble page below. So if you guys want to watch the movie with us, go to Twitch, go to Rumble, because that's where we're going to continue this show. Until then, I'm going to start off with a little bit of flashback here, and Rob's really going to enjoy this one. We're going back to the year 2000. Remember when sports was great? Remember when you could just like watch games and like that'll be it, and you were satisfied and you were happy? Let's go back to a moment where actually sports made us happy, just for a little bit. So there we go.
I love this theme.
Tonight in the big city, all roads lead to the big ballpark of the Bronx, as Reggie Jackson used to call it. Tonight, Sunday night baseball from Yankee Stadium. It's the Red Sox and the Yankees renewing hostilities. It's the house that Ruth built, and so many.
That's the old one too, before they tore it down.
Yeah.
Tonight we've got
Monument Park, which I kept calling Monument Valley.
I still can't believe they didn't just renovate that. Why the hell would you tear that down?
Yeah, I don't know.
They wanted their big green ball.
I actually saw Roger Clemens pitch against Derek Jeter.
Red Sox and Yankees. So many great pennant race battles over the years.
I mean, there's really only a few baseball stadiums I absolutely want to see a game in, but they're almost all classic. You know, Wrigley Field, the old Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park. I mean, San Francisco, but that's just because of the McCovey Cove, you know, the bay. But